Hello, this is a training video on how to do some more advanced things with the all-in-one report. Please make sure that you've already watched the beginning training video for the all-in-one report. If you're looking at this on YouTube, the link will be in the description. If you're looking at this through the EmpowerDB Documentation Center, you should be seeing pretty clearly a link to the beginning one as well. Okay, so let's get started. I've already got this report set up here to just say, give me all clients active in 2022. And I want to see the date. When we click on the settings for a column, we can see like exactly what this column is. It's getting the date from the address locations table. And then here we're seeing their location. So here I want to do an inner sort to say sort from earliest to latest. So I'm guaranteed that this one is always, the latest date is always going to be last. And then I'm going to combine into, instead of a list, a last. So now this is getting me everybody's latest locations. This series of steps that I've just done is something that you do quite often for lots of purposes. You could potentially come here and say, I'm going to hide this column and say, I don't really care about that date column being visible. I just kind of need it to be there so I can do that sort. Okay, so let's go over some of the other column settings here that we didn't quite focus on too much in the beginning video. So we can change the format on some of these columns. So here you might want to say, all I really care about is this date, and you can do that. You can also say, I want to see the county or the parish that that person's city is in. So the system knows the county for every city in the country and can do that working out for you. Let's turn that back to that. And then on the dates, we can change the format for the date to instead look like that and other things like that. So certain column types have that format. You can experiment with that. The next thing to show is this show raw value setting here. So when this data is being saved in the system, we're not saving the words Malden, comma, MA. We're saving like a code in the system. And so we can turn on that raw value thing to see what that code is. So here, the code that's being saved for Malden.ma is this. So MA does correlate to the state code there. And then this, what we're seeing afterwards, kind of matches the zip code sometimes. So don't like rely on it and know that like this is definitely a zip code, especially since many cities have many zip codes. And some zip codes span multiple cities. But that's kind of what's being saved as the raw value there. Here for dates, this is what's called Unix time. You can kind of Google what that is. It's like the number of seconds since January 1st, 1970. It's actually a really efficient way of keeping track of dates in databases like this. So the reason why you would want to see raw data is there's kind of three reasons. The first is maybe you're writing some sort of formula column that needs to like do math on dates, and you kind of want to like really kind of see like what's that math actually going to be? What's it working on? It can be like, okay, it's taking this number, it's multiplying by that. You would really never want to run a math on dates that look like this on the processed value. It's just, there's a reason why it's collected, the date values are corrected in the number of seconds since January 1st, 1970. It's because it's doing math on dates is just so much easier when you can use it like that. The other reason why you would want to look at the raw value sometimes is maybe you're doing a custom sort, and I'll show you that in a little bit, and you want to be able to have a good indication about like what those raw values are to set up the sort. And then the third reason is sometimes you might want to like set up a report that you can export that doesn't show client names, and you instead want it to show client IDs. So if you set the client name column to show the raw value, you're seeing now their ID instead. Okay, so that is showing the raw value. The next kind of more advanced thing here is to say child entries use parent data. Your system might have different words for child and parent. Okay, so now that we've turned that on, now it's going looking through and saying any client here who's a child of a parent, where instead of putting whatever their location is, we're going to put their parent's location. So it's very often, especially in situations like location, where you might intentionally not be collecting the location of children because you know that it's just always going to be the same as their parent. So why bother people with double data entering that? But then when you run reports, you do kind of still need to like know, like, okay, this was the location of the child based off of looking at their parent data. So if you have a situation like that, that's when you would use the situation to say, okay, don't use the child information, look up whatever we have for the parent. Okay, now let's take a look at custom sorting. So here, I'm gonna group by this location field. I'm gonna I don't care about this date anymore, and let's combine this into count. So this is nice, but it's quite long, and there's all these locations here that we really don't care about. Like we can sort this by that, and like, okay, now I guess the A's are up top first, but what I really want to see is like, I mostly want my report to show like Cambridge and Boston and some other cities. So that's why we can create a custom sort. So off in another window here, I've already got this worked out. So you're going to put in the code value and then what you want that to appear as. So anybody whose city location is stored as that code value will appear as Cambridge. I can take off those commas if I wanted to. Like I can put whatever I want here, and that's what it will appear as when I group them. So let's click Save Changes this and see how it works. Okay, so we had 3 in Cambridge, 4 in Boston, and those were up top because that's what we put for our custom sort. And then the rest of these was like, and here's everything else. So we can do a couple more things to kind of improve upon the everything else. We can put something like this. This is lowercase o, and say all other cities. And now everything else gets grouped like that. We can also do that and say nothing equals blank city, and now it knows to separate, okay, all of the cities, and then 22 had this being as blank. Okay, there's a help article here that explains some more fancy things that you can do with this custom sort. Okay, so let's somehow get rid of all this. Let's group by client. I did so many weird things. It's fine. Okay. Let's see. So I wanted to actually, let's ungroup by this client. And let's bring back the date. So next I want to show these 4 special columns here. The most common one that you'll be potentially using is this formula column. And with this formula column, we can create, it added a new column here, and what's going to show up in this column is going to be based off of some sort of formula that we use to combine something from over here. So do work on the existing columns over there. And we do that by saying, like, we can do a really simple and completely pointless one saying, okay, give me the date. And it kind of adds in, this is kind of the report's little code indicator for that, the raw value of this column. And I want to multiply that by 2. And now we have this number, which means nothing, but you'll be able to make up all kinds of great formulas on your own that does fancy things. So we can do math, and then it'll follow the kind of like math rules that, you know how to write math, I'm sure. But you can do all kinds of other things with this formula column based off of the PHP programming language. It follows all the rules of the PHP programming language. If you don't know PHP programming language, that's totally fine. You don't have to know PHP programming language because you know who does? The internet. So we can go to Google and say PHP, how to capitalize, convert to capital letters. Yes, that's exactly what I want to do. And it tells us, oh, this is the function that we need to use. So in PHP, we can take this function and say, okay, I want to use that function and I want to put the city in there. And now it's going to operate on that function, and now it's capitalizing things in that city. Again, I'm kind of almost intentionally showing you examples of things that you would never need to do because I don't want to show you an example of like a real example and make you like think that like that's the only use for this kind of thing. I'm trying to show you like there's all kinds of ways that you can do this. Read this help article for some like common formula, like things that you might want to do, but a very common thing that you might want to do is have a function. This is an empower DB function saying if then, we can say like if the raw value of ID client is over 100, we can say over 100, otherwise under 100. Okay. Again, no reason why you'd want to do this, but it just goes to show like how many cool things you can do on this report. You can have a formula column reference another formula column. You can just keep adding. Sometimes we'll build these reports and then we've got like 4 formula columns that eventually get added in here and that all kind of like add things together to do fun stuff. Okay, so that's a formula column. Again, read that help article that I showed you before. It'll tell you all kinds of other things. The next thing I want to do is I want to go back and group this and combine into account, and let's hide this one again. And now I want to show you a percentage column. So now that I've got that, I can add a percentage column. I say, okay, I want to look at the reference that clients column, and I want to take a percentage of the sum at the bottom, or maybe a count of all rows or a count of non-empty rows. I'm not going to go too much in depth about like what the difference would be in this case. I kind of, play around with it, see what makes sense to you. Everybody, you've got different use cases. So we've got 7% are in completely unknown, 5% are in Boston, 26% are blank. So it's kind of a way to add this very helpful percentage column into your results. All right. The next two columns here, lookup column and cross table reference columns. These are like beyond advanced, like so advanced. Before filming this video, I had to like rewatch these training videos, be like, what do these do again? I don't want to muddy your brain with what these things do. It's kind of nuts. What I just want to say is the reason why you would want to do these two things is if one of the linkable reports functions, way to use linkable reports is not doing it for you. You'll know when it's not doing it for you, hopefully. So go add these two columns and watch the training video if you're really curious. I'm really kind of like making it seem so tempting, like you have to know, but like honestly, it's very, very rare that you'll use those. So worry about other things for now, I would say. Okay, and I will show you soon what I think, yeah, I'm looking at my notes here. That's what's next. So let's talk about linkable reports. Linkable reports is a way to include multiple all-in-one reports together, like kind of like tie them together. So there's 3 different ways that we can do that. The first is we can say, I've got this report good here, and I want to include some information that's been figured out on some other report. So let's see, I had one worked out that I thought was pretty good. So I want to include the direct time spent that's on that other report. So we can modify these settings here and then say, okay, this is a linkable column from this report, and let's click that link there, open up that report and kind of see what it's doing. So we're getting all programs and we're doing some sort of processing on their services, and we've somehow worked out that this is 4.75. That's the number we need, and we've got to say, okay, I'm going to come here and group by that. And so now when I've grouped by this number is huge, and that's because it's guessing that you want to sum together these three rows. So it's always going to be the same thing repeated, 183, 183. So we can just pick first or last, it doesn't matter. And so now we're kind of saying, pull the values from that other report into the results of this one. It's going to like match up based off of their client IDs and all this stuff. This other report could include way more clients that are than our original report. So let's see, Tony Shot. Again, these are all fake names. So that person is here. So I'm not going to go through and try to keep finding names. The gist is, this report, it doesn't matter who is on this client. It's only going to match up the people that are already meeting our criteria from this report. It's only going to take their values from that report and match it into here. It's not going to start adding, when we add it in this way, it's not going to add in brand new clients to our list of results. Okay, and again, I know that like when I first added this thing in and I grouped by this, and then I said you had to do first to last, probably can imagine it might be confusing to you why that happened and why you had to go through and make sure it said first instead of some. But it's just one of those things where people really are smarter than computers. The computers do their best, and you have to kind of like make sure that you're double checking on what the computer is guessing for you and saying, nope, I don't want a sum, I want it first. You're kind of looking into being aware of the groupings here and saying this is Amanda 3 times because she's got 3 different locations, and it's just repeating the same number there because of that. And that won't always happen, but it just happened in this case. Okay, so that's one way to use the linkable results, linkable reports in a way. Another thing you can do is, let's say, okay, let's add in a new condition, and we're going to say, I only want clients here that appear in some other report. So we're going to look in metadata and say, I only want the condition to be client equals clients from another report. Let's see what this does. Okay, I have no idea, no idea what this other report is. We can click in here and look at it, but it's kind of narrowing it down and saying, okay, we've got this set of clients here, and we want to make sure that we're only including clients active in 2022 and clients who also appeared in that other report. So sometimes how we'll do this, the way that we'll use this often is to kind of create one report for like qualifying clients, and then use that same qualifying clients block again and again and again without having to rebuild it in every new report that we build that's like using that same set of clients. So this is, I mean, like we're building a reporting page for one specific funder where it's always going to be the same set of clients for all the questions. So we'll kind of build that one report and just use it as we'll call it feeders very often. You'll see us use the word feeder. So that's one way to do it. We can also, oftentimes we'll say like, I want to include clients who are matching this report, but then like exclude clients from this other report. And it's again, maybe technically possible to do it all within this one query weir to like set up a really long, complicated condition. Yes, I want these clients, but exclude these clients. But sometimes you find it's just simpler to set up one report saying I want these, and then another report saying don't want these, and then say this, not that. Okay? Did that confuse you? If it did, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Forget what I just said. Okay, so there's one other way that you can use linkable other reports in this way, and that is to say, I only want to include clients in this report down here that meet a certain condition that's already been set up in some other report. So I've already figured this one out. So I made another report called zip code formula, and I want to only include clients in this report that have an odd zip code. So I can say only clients that have 1 in the odd zip code column. So is this with it? No, this one. So this is that other report, and this is just a formula column that said if the zip code, the process zip code, is odd, that's what this business means. Again, don't know how to do PHP? That's fine. You could Google it. And I forgot to mention, you can also ChatGPT it. PHP, how to make, to check to see if something is odd. ChatGPT will tell you. All right. So again, don't freak out about some of this kind of stuff. You can just figure it out as you go. So it's saying if it's this odd, then put a 1 in this column. Just kind of like that 1 doesn't really mean anything. It's just kind of like a marker to say like, yep, this happens. And then back here, we can say, okay, show me only the people who have an odd zip code of 1. Odd zip code, that column value is 1. Okay. Let's see, what's the next thing we're going to look over? Okay, so here are our results for direct time spent. This is, I'm going to get rid of this thing here. Let's go take a look at this one again. So we're going to open up this report, and we're going to say, okay, but this is looking at June to September. I don't want it to look at June, September. I want it to look at the January 1st to December 31st. And now we come back here and reload. And now these numbers conceivably are different. Okay, so you might be thinking about like, gosh, so every time I change a date here, I have to then remember to come back to this other report and change this other report too. Like, what if I've got like 10 different times that date's used, which is not an exaggeration. That sometimes happens. And so we say, no, that's not what you do. That's why we have constants. It's very common that people will want, when they're using constants, to have one constant for start date and another constant for end date. So that's why I kind of have this little shortcut thing here where we can say, give me some start and end constants. And now we can say, all right, here, 1, 20, 22, 12, 31, 2022. And now we can say, instead of using a specific date, I want it to use our start constant. A lot of times people will add the start and end constants and think that it like magically knows that it's supposed to feed those start and end constants into here. Nope, you guys still got to tell it. I want my start constant to be this, and my end start date to be our start constant, and end date to be our end constant. Then we have to make sure we go into our other report and add these constants as well. Start, end. We don't have to actually change what these values are, and I'll tell you in a moment why this date appears so weird. In this other report, we don't have to change these values because this report is going to feed these constants into the values for here. So gosh, I'm like really crossing my fingers here. Let's do half of a year and see if these numbers generally change into half. Ugh. So we saw other numbers change. Okay, so these dates are going to feed into this report and pass those constants into there so that you only have to change the values one time whenever you want to change these values. So you could potentially be using this for, like, you don't have any feeder, like linkable reports in there, feeder reports, and you've just got you've got the same date being used multiple times in the same report, and you like don't want to go through and change them one by one. You can do that. Sometimes we find that people will just add start and end constants and set them to be used here, and they're only ever used once, and they just think that's what you're supposed to do. You don't have to use the constants. You can keep these here. If this is your only time you're using the start date and end date, you can just put in the date manually like you had before. The other reason why you would want to use constants is if you were building a custom report. The custom report this is the custom report building tool. The starting page for each of these custom reports asks which constants to use, and so you would kind of need to build these constants to align with the constants that you've set up here. For example, you might add another constant and say, I want to add in a code for program, and we'll look at, we have program ID 2 up here, and instead of saying active by program, I want to be active by our program constant. And so now this is getting all of our clients active in program ID 2. You can see what the ID is of a program by when you visit the program list page. We can kind of see it. See at the bottom left, see this one is 121. So that you can put program IDs in there. And so you would want to do something like this where, let's say you're building a custom report and you needed a way for that starting page of the custom report to have a drop down to select which program you wanted to see the report results for. You would say, just build it here as just something to give us some results. And then when this gets fed into that custom reporting tool, it'll have that drop down and everything's going to work perfectly. Read the documentation article over here in this custom report world. When we went to add in a custom report there, read this documentation for more. And there's a video that explains that much better than this. Okay, so that's why you'd want to use constants. You can use star as a way of saying, show me clients that have anything filled in for program, which in this case is kind of ridiculous because clients will always have something filled in for program. Or you can use a period to say, show me clients who have anything entered for program, even if it's blank. This you would, maybe for this you would kind of do like gender instead and say, give me all programs, and where gender equals, instead of specifying a value, we're going to say use our gender constant. And now this is showing everybody who has just everything. It's kind of like it's like a catch-all with a period. Most often you'll say anything entered at all for gender, or the code for gender. So now that's female. This is male. And when you're looking in your setting up your variables and the options and stuff, that's where you'll see where these codes are. So I just knew that 1 was female and 2 was male. Okay, that's constants. Now let's talk about why, when we first got this set up, it looks something like this. Like that. This is what we call a date formula. So what it's doing here is they're saying, okay, whenever we write the letter M, we mean use the current month, right now. Whenever we're opening up this report, no matter what day or month or whatever it is, it's going to be like, okay, the current month is March. Current day, current year. Then we can do things like go back 30. So this is like saying go back, the start date should be 30 days ago. The current date minus 30. So I'm filming this on March 17th. The 30 days ago is somewhere in February. You don't have to like worry about being like, oh, it's like the 17th of March. Do I have to like do this? Like the go back 13 days and then like minus 1 month for here. Is that what I have to do? No. It knows like 30 days ago to figure out whatever that date was 30 days ago. If you wanted to do 90 days, you could do that. Potentially, if you wanted to use like 3 months ago, you could do that. You don't have to use the D here. You can say like this is the first date, the first day of the current month. And there's all kinds of like really tricky steps you have to take for doing things like the last day of the previous quarter, things like that. I've got them all written out, what date formulas you would use for those. They're in the all-in-one report documentation section. So try to find that if you have those really particular needs. But most of the time we are just kind of going in here and saying like 90 days ago. Okay. Now let's see what we're going to talk about next. Okay, just a couple other things. Meld report is at the very bottom. This is kind of a way of saying we've got one report that's got all their data processed like this. I want to feed in the rows from a completely other report. Let's find something. And now this is going to give us like really anything. Gosh, who knows what we could find by clicking on one of these things. Hotline calls. Okay, so now we got like some other people's names in here, and now we've got like crisis intervention, and now like some sort of written notes. And that's just because that other report we just fed in contains information that's like the first column is a name, and the second column is maybe the service was provided, and the third column is some notes. So you would kind of intentionally build the other reports that you're melding in to contain the same like data that makes sense when it's combined together. All right, this is used pretty infrequently, but we do use it from time to time, but it's just really important to like, this isn't a way to be like, oh, I want to include some clients who are this and also other clients processing the same ways. Nope, for that you would kind of like, that's why we would say, okay, I want to include gender equals that, or birthday age is greater than 18. Okay, and then put in some parentheses. So this is the way that you would include more people in your results, not that meld report thing. The meld report thing is if you've got something that looks is built totally different, but you still for some reason need it to be mixed in to this report here. Okay, one more thing I can think of at this time to show you, and that is templates. So on the beginning of this all-in-one report screen, there's this templates link here. And this is going to be a list of reports that can be built for you that are like maybe a little bit complicated, that just takes a lot of predictable series of steps for you that you would frequently need to have something like this done for you. So here's an example. Occupancy days. If you have a residential program, you could say, I want to show a report that showed me the occupancy nights of the shelter. Let's click on that. Blah, 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 blah. It's got this query for you already set up. This is the query that you need in order to do that kind of thing. If you look at this query and you go move-in date before the end, no, it should be move-in date after the start. Nope. This query is accurate, promise you. Okay, so then this is showing us the nights during the time frames. We see lots of 30 days during the time frame, and then this person just moved in more recently, so we see them as 8. Okay. You can then modify this report more, and you can say, well, actually, I only want to see people who are children. So you can still play around with it now, but at least this kind of gave you that starting point, especially because this like nights during time frame thing uses, you know, a really specific formula in here, and you don't have to bother with that. And then if you want to change the dates in here, then you change these start and end constants. So let's say just this 1 week. I've got all that. Okay, so there's most of the templates are different iterations of occupancy nights or days based off your various residential programs, but you've got other things like counting up, doing pre-building a formula showing total income. This one actually does get used quite often, where we say, show me, this is just the latest locations of everybody who's been active in all programs in the past 2 years, which is a very specific number with intent. What we're doing here is we're saying, if you're running reports on location data, you probably are only caring about clients active in the past 2 years. So we want to set up one report that just gets us the latest locations for everybody. We save this report, and then we can access that latest locations report. Let's just stick with that and say I want to add a column. We're going to access our linkable reports. It's got to be somewhere in there. Latest, most recent, everyone's latest cities. Great. Location. So this is now feeding in the data that's kind of like based off of that other report that we built. Again, that other report probably has a lot more people on it. It doesn't matter. It's only ever going to be feeding in the locations of the people that we have in this report. So that template makes this process go a lot faster. Okay. Again, I hope this video gave you what you needed to feel better about doing advanced things, and not just like made you frustrated because I didn't actually tell you how to do the thing that you needed to know how to do. Again, the reason why is just because people need to do an infinite number of things with this report, and you can either show a couple of those and then, yeah, this is just what I chose to do. So hopefully this is helpful to you. Let us know how you're doing. If you need more help on some of these concepts, we can really often, a lot of times we say, watch these first 2 training videos, get a sense of how to do this kind of thing. And then let's talk about some specific queries that you would have, and we'll use those examples and do a training with you kind of more specific around your setup and your specific queries. We're very happy to do that. And then we're also just very happy to, send us a link to this report and say, hey, I've built this thing. Why am I seeing this? And how do I get it to do that? We're just really happy to help. All right. Thanks so much. Bye.